Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this first CITYFOOD Network webinar. We're very excited to begin our exchange. It's been a long time coming, and we're so pleased that you've all joined us. I'll just take a few moments to introduce myself and my colleague Tiago, who will be supporting CITYFOOD from ICLEI's side, and then hand the presentation over to Marielle Dubbeling, who I know many of you know. So my name again is Tori Okner. If we haven't met, I am the head of strategy and partnerships with ICLEI, and I come to ICLEI with expertise in food systems and urban planning, having lived and worked in Latin America and Europe, and as special assistant for food policy for the city of Boston some years ago. So this issue is one that I'm incredibly passionate about and very excited to see ICLEI and RUAF partnering together. The institutional commitment to the network and to this partnership is very strong, and we are really thrilled to be working with Marielle and with all of you. I'm going to pass the mic, so to speak, over to Tiago to introduce himself, and then for most of the presentation, we will have the opportunity for Marielle to get everyone up to speed on the latest thinking in terms of conceptualizing a city-region food system, how we are talking about it, how different local and regional governments are defining it, and of course, we're very eager to hear from all of you. Tiago, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you, Tori. Yeah, I can say the same. We're very excited, and just to see the participants of the webinar, we have a very diverse audience. And here at ICLEI, I am supporting the Resilient Cities team and also the CITYFOOD Network. Previously, I used to work for São Paulo Municipality in the Housing Secretariat, and also had some volunteer work with the NGO Cities Without Hunger in São Paulo. So also it's a topic that it's very interesting for me, and I am very happy to join the webinar and also to learn from Marielle and Alexandra. So I think I can pass the mic again to Marielle to start her presentation.
This is Tori again. Before Marielle, you get started, I just want to give a special thanks to Alexandra, who will be sharing the experience from Quito, a city that has done incredible food systems work and is really taking an interesting territorial approach. And thank you so much for making time to speak with us today, Alexandra.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning. Good afternoon with everybody. For me, it's a pleasure to share our experience. And so in a few minutes, I will be my presentation.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thanks to everybody who is online. I can see from the list that we have people from Antananarivo, we have people from the Philippines, from Belo Horizonte, from Sao Paulo, from Malmö, from Ede in the Netherlands, and I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. So yeah, a pleasure to be here for the first CITYFOOD webinar. We have a smaller group of participants, so I hope we have time to share and also listen to your experiences by the end of the webinar. I will be giving a presentation on our recent work on city-region food systems. So those of you who were in Valencia will see some familiar slides, but I hope I've added also some additional thinking. So after my presentation, we'll have Alexandra's presentation with the example of Quito, and then a good 45 minutes for exchange. And then we would like to wrap up and discuss with you next steps and possibly, you know, the topic of the next webinar to be held somewhere next year, and to see what cities could present their experiences then. So why do we talk about a city region? No, compared to, for example, the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, where the focus is on the urban area or the city area. And for us, there's a couple of reasons. One is that if we look at where food supply is taking place, then research has actually shown that about 60% of all irrigated crop production and 35% of all rain-fed crop production lies within 20 kilometers of a city, which in itself is not strange, because cities were always built traditionally on the most fertile agricultural areas. So if we think about city growth, then the potential threat to losing agricultural land and food supply from these figures is very large. So cities do have a responsibility also to look at the agricultural areas outside their boundaries. The second one is that if we look at the urban and rural areas in the region, that the rural areas are also very important to the cities. A small percentage of production, but often a large amount of food processing is taking place. The rural hinterland is very important for biodiversity, for climate change adaptation by keeping areas green, for watershed management, for energy production. And of course, there's a large flow of people, goods, and services between the areas. So I think that's why all the international agendas are now recognizing, no, that we have to look at urban-rural linkages. And we have to look at a territorial perspective, which is larger than the urban area itself. And that's why we focus on a city region. Also, if we look at, you know, a larger degree of self-reliance of the city to reduce vulnerability to disruptions in food supply, urban agriculture per se can never feed the city. City region agriculture will also not be able to feed the city, but will be able to achieve a larger percentage of self-sufficiency, as Alexandra will show later in her presentation. So how do we define the city region? And this is still a debate which is ongoing, and cities struggle with setting the boundaries. And this is just a list of criteria that have been used. So some use existing boundaries, the metropolitan region or the provincial boundary. Some natural boundaries. So, for example, the city of Lima is bordered at one side by the sea and at the other side by the Andean Mountains. Some look at food flows in food sheds, so where is a larger part of the food being produced? Or they look at future urban growth and city expansion. So in 2030, what will be the area that is being covered by the city or affected by urban expansion? Or they look at where major food industries are located. And I've added here a link to the example of Toronto, where you can see how they define the boundary. This is an example of Melbourne in Australia, where you can see that the city region in that case goes beyond the urban growth boundary, which is the wide area, and includes what they call an inner food ball, which extends up to 50 kilometers from the city, and an outer food ball, which in their case extends to 200 kilometers out of the city. And they've defined this region in terms of production capacity and major sources of food supply for Melbourne. These are several other examples. This one is Colombo in Sri Lanka, and Colombo and surrounding cities are growing to such an extent that the government already made the decision to dissolve Colombo as a jurisdictional area and to create a new jurisdiction which is called Megapolis, which is basically the former province surrounding Colombo. So when looking at the city region, they took this future planning perspective in mind. Here on the right, we have the example of Toronto and about 18 or 19 surrounding municipalities. And they're looking at planning of that region in terms of urban growth and urban green belt, so that whole area, this whole area is considered the city region. In Utrecht, in the Netherlands, Utrecht is surrounded by 9 smaller municipalities which do interact in terms of joint policy making. And that's why they took this already, although informal, arrangement between a larger and smaller cities to serve as city region. So you can see the large variety. This one is in Quito in Zambia, where they basically looked at major food production areas to define their own concept of a city region. So what do we mean by a sustainable and a resilient city region food system? One is to reduce vulnerability and increase resilience. So a city will be able to draw from food sources from not only from its own urban area, but from a larger area, and not be dependent only on global and international sources. The vision is to have diversified food supply chains, both larger scale and smaller scale systems, to have the capacity to draw on waste streams, so recycle waste water, food waste for food production, to create synergies across a range of policy objectives, so increasing access to healthy food while at the same time creating jobs and livelihoods for producers in the surrounding area. And sustainable and resilient city region food systems should be people-centered and inclusive, where everybody, all types of consumers, benefit from access to healthy, sustainable food and employment. Such systems will have the benefit that consumers will have access to affordable and nutritious food from local and regional producers. And this will enhance transparency in the chain. It will increase access to markets and alternative markets that improve livelihoods of small scale and larger producers in the region. By shortening value chains and making them more efficient, linking producers to market systems, we can contribute to sustainable diets and reduce food waste. Think of a circular economy where water, nutrients, and energies can be recycled. And also think of participatory governance structure to include stakeholders from urban and rural areas. This is an image that illustrates such vision, where we have different type of production systems that both supply food as well as jobs, as well as specific ecosystem services. This is another example of a vision from Melbourne, where, as you can see here, local food is locally processed. Food is directly marketed to the city. Water is recycled. communities are growing their own food. Food waste is becoming a fertilizer, etc. This is an example of a Toronto vision, where Toronto city region says, okay, we want healthy food for all, sourced as regionally as possible and as sustainably produced, processed, and packaged as possible. And yeah, they have split that vision, you know, to a lot of different type of outcomes, which they clustered along the food chain and different sustainability areas. So RUAF and FAO, we have worked in the past 3 years on how to assess and to plan for such city region food systems. And we have prepared a toolkit where you can see in detail how to prepare yourself with a local team for such assessment and planning, how to define the city region, how to develop a vision, so what type of localized vision, how to look more in depth into the city region, where food is coming from, what people consume, where food is processed and marketed. Look at specific indicators, so food and nutrition security, how many jobs are generated in the food system, how much food waste is generated at different parts of the chain, and then bring that all together in different policy support programs and new food governance structures. Just to give some examples of the policy programs that and mechanisms that were developed in the cities where we've been working. So Alexandra will tell you about how the assessment led to the design of a food strategy. In Medellin and in Melbourne, the assessments have led to the setup of new regional governance mechanisms, where city government and regional governments are trying to connect and to plan together. In Colombo, city region food is being included in National Food Act, food waste reuse in sanitation bylaws, and in Utrecht, food is included in healthy city programs. In Toronto, the assessment led to new policy proposals for city regional food hubs and food infrastructure. And in Quito, in Zambia, this led to new support programs for farmers. Some of the issues that came up and that we also would like your views on to see how you've handled that is, of course, data availability, especially on city region level, if that doesn't comply with existing administrative boundaries. The issue of cross-jurisdictional relations, it's not always easy now to link up local governments with a metropolitan or a provincial government, especially not if governments are of, let's say, an opposite color. So this requires a lot of time and processes. The entry points may differ. So depending on the amount of data you have, depending on the policies you have, you may start doing an assessment, let's say, from blank, or you may start focusing on specific issues of interest. It's also important, these processes that I showed took about 2.5 years, but not to wait for 2 years doing research, but start building on what's currently being done to show impact. You all know that when we talk about short food supply chains and things like local procurement, there may be restrictive national and European frameworks. that we have to be creative in. And I also know that some of you have good examples to share. And one of the issues which can be further explored is how can we better involve the private sector for providing data, for also doing research, and for engaging in a more social and inclusive food system. You can read more about this work in the toolkit that I mentioned, in these different reports. And also, if you go to handouts, which you can see on the webinar, we've included there further resources. So thank you very much. And I'll hand over to Alexandra. And after that, we can do a round of questions and sharings. So can Alexandra's presentation be uploaded, please?
Okay, it's ready. Can you see the presentation?
We can see it. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Ok, ¿cómo minimizo esto? ¿Cuál lado? Este. No, esa no toques. No, cerrar no. Okay, I will share with you our experience about the city region food system assessment in the Quito city. No, no puedo pasarla.
You use your mouse, then you can pause it or yes, okay.
Okay, perfect. First of all, some information about my city. Quito has a population of 2.5 million of inhabitants, with an urban population of 72%. The city has a growth, expansive, discontinuous, and with a low density, and it affects food sovereignty, territorial equity, and sustainable development. The city has a high vulnerability to volcanic eruptions, earth movements, and climatic and seismic events. Quito was one of the 8 cities in the world in which the city region food system evaluation project was implemented with territorial support of RUAF Foundation. For the municipality of Quito, food is not a distant topic. It began with its urban agriculture project in 2002, and it was one space in the areas of economic and social inclusion, environment, health, and resilience. And the city is currently working on the design of the food policy with a systemic and comprehensive vision that will be ready for 2018. Quito is one of the signatory cities of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact since 2016. And our commitment with the pact plus the city region food system evaluation will contribute to build a sustainable and resilient food system for the city. The The description of the current food dynamics in Quito region present a complex and permanent interaction between cultural and ecosystem processes that exist in the territory. The food region of Quito is defined through 3 rings that surround the axis of the city, connecting the flows and interactions of the actors of the food system. The first ring, the yellow one, represents the urban and peri-urban areas of the metropolitan district of Quito, with a low capacity to produce food, and it only covered the 5% of the food requirements of its population. The second ring is pink, and it represents the province of Pichincha, within which Quito lies. And this is the city region food system of Quito, with a capacity to cover the food requirements of the population only 14%. The third ring, the blue one, represents 12 provinces that play an important role in supplying food to Quito. This region have a high capacity to produce food, and the capacity is the 2,062% of the food requirements of its population. So Quito, such as one of the biggest cities in the country, received food of all the country and the border countries and international imports. The most important results of the diagnosis of the food system of Quito region are: in the field of production, Quito production only reached 5% of its requirements. The consumption of the city does not always contribute to the local production process. High inequity in access to produced resources. The quality of work benefits is precarious. High use of agrochemicals. High underutilization of productive land. Low crop productivity. In the field of food processing, a high territorial concentration and profit in a few companies. 97% of the agri-food companies are located in the ring 1 and 2, but the raw material comes from the ring 3. Milling companies import up to 98% of their raw material. In the field of distribution, long chains of intermediation, for supermarket chains handle 90% of their retail distribution. Between 5 and 20% of production is direct marketing. In the face of food procurement, 50% the population buy by means of supermarkets, 21% of the population buy by means of neighborhood stores and markets and mini markets, and 40% of the population use a trusted lending figure. And by the end of the month, 20% of the population stops buying basic products for lack of money. In the field of consumption, there is a strong inequality and vulnerability in consumption. Homogenized pattern of consumption, unbalanced diet, chronic malnutrition represent 29%, overweight and obesity represent 63%, consumption of meals outside the home 71%, and in the face of post-consumption untreated organic waste, 70 tons per week of food with the possibility to be redistributed. About the analysis, I only want to mention the opportunities and the strengths within this analysis. Opportunities. Quito has a region with promising agricultural vocation, high social entrepreneurship, availability of organic waste. And strengths, Quito has high ecosystem and productive diversity, survival of rural and ancestral family agriculture, food industry insert on the rise, success of small initiatives, good water quality, and soil with agricultural vocation. About the conclusions of this diagnostic, we can say that the sustainability of food in Quito is at risk due to a series of emerging and growing challenges, such as pressures in agriculture, water scarcity, and high levels of untreated food waste. High natural risk factors necessarily demand policies to improve resilience and sustainability. The market has favored hyperproductivity over social and popular economic processes. Family, rural, urban, and peri-urban agriculture are weak. And healthy nutrition, sustainable diets, and feeding practice have been a second place issue. Oh, no pasa. What Quito needs to construct a sustainable food system? Emphasize the right to food in order to guarantee food security with sovereignty. Plan its food region system with a health, nutrition, resilience, and sustainable approach by strengthening a more inclusive local economy. Ensure participatory governance of food system to make it dynamic and sustainable. And about the achievements of Quito's city region food system diagnosis, we can say that awareness of Quito's food dynamics. Second, understanding the need to have radical changes. Third, inclusion of food in Quito's resilience strategy. Fourth, inclusion of food in Vision 2040 consultation. Fifth, resilient and sustainable food system will be an indicator for the certification of Quito as a healthy municipality. And sixth, a start-up of Quito's food policy with a technical and political board. For the moment, you can see this is a food policy draft from the municipality vision still. Our proposal has 6 strategic pillars, such as a management of food resources for the future, sensibilization and food safety, urban and rural links, management of organic waste, inclusive food economy, and food planning. And we have considered an important pillar that is transversal for all the proposal, such as food governance. We hope to take impacts in 2 levels, in the local and in the region. In the local level, the local production and responsible consumption will contribute to improvement of the nutritional situation and the health status of the Quito's population. In the region level, a responsible consumption of Quito favors the transformation of production towards a more sustainable agriculture in this food region. So I can say that this proposal is being discussed by some of the actors of the food system of Quito through workshops of analysis of the strategic pillars. And for the moment, we have 28 main actors represented, 2 groups of consumers, smaller ecological farmers, national government, provincial government, local government, cooperation agencies, business sector, academy, among others. And That's all that I can say about our experience.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Very interesting, and congratulations to Quito for for taking on this challenge of designing a food policy. I would like to open the floor now for the participants to either pose questions of clarification to myself or to Alexandra, and or to share your own experiences on the topics. For example, how is your city involved in, you know, assessing its food system, or planning for a city region food system, or what type of actions are you developing? If you go to your small webinar screen and you click on attendees, you can raise your hand to talk. And then I assume that you can either unmute your own, or Tiago will unmute you. So let's see how that works. Anybody who wants to share or to make a comment? If not, you can also go to the chat box, where you can type in a chat to everybody, while I'll figure out how you can be unmuted. I see a hand from Cheered. Can you unmute yourself, Cheered? Okay, great. The floor is yours. Cheered, the floor is yours. Well, I can't hear you. If we can't hear you, please write it on a chat. And while we're trying to solve Cheered's problem, we can start first with Carmen. Tiago, can you give speaking rights to Carmen?
Hi, everybody. Hello, do you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to know, it's a question for Alexandra. So thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to know what exactly was the role of the Ministry of Agriculture as a main stakeholder in the definition of the food policy.
Thank you, Carmen. Let's take a couple of more questions and then answer them. Beatrice Carvalho.
Can you hear me? It's not Beatrice. We are connected together here from Belo Horizonte.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is João. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for Marielle and Alexandra for the very great presentation. And we would like to talk a little bit about Belo Horizonte policy, but before, a fast question, a short question about how do you imagine agroecology or another sustainable way of agriculture can enforce these politics we are discussing? You see, we heard just few words about it. We could see the problem with pesticides and stuff, but we would like to hear your opinion on how agroecology could be linked to this discussion we are having now.
Okay, thank you. We'll get back to you for sharing your experience. But I want to take one more from Cheered, if he can speak, and then we'll ask Alexandra first to answer. Cheered, go ahead. We still can't hear Cheered. I don't know if the capacity center can help. Okay, I still hope we can solve this problem. Let's just go to Raulito Reyes.
Hi Marielle, this is the capacity center. I think maybe we're having some connection problems, but there's also a hand raised from Raulito.
Okay, can you give the floor to Raulito?
Yep, I'll just do that.
In the Philippines, we are doing the intercity alliance in terms of food production. But the problem is we have problems on the boundaries. And on the political side, we have an election every 3 years. And every 3 years, we have almost new leaders and new plans. So my suggestion is, why do we have to have the food system be part of the policy or be mainstreamed by the government as part of as mainstream development plan as part of the institution, so that the leaders will change but the system will remain?
I could not really hear your last question, Raul. Can you please repeat the last part of the question?
Well, in the Philippines, we have actually the food system, but the problem is every 3 years we have an election. And in every election, we have almost new leaders. So a new system will come again. So the last system is being abandoned by the new leader. So what we are now suggesting now in the local level is we have to create an alliance, which is system-based alliance that is being mainstreamed by the regional governments, that the local leaders will change, but the food system will remain. So that's what we're doing. But the problem now is it's in the process of being converted into law. So we are trying to be part of this program that you have just presented to us on how to handle the political side of the system, the change of leadership, the jurisdictional problem in terms of boundaries. And that's our concern now. We want to know more about how the Quito had confronted all those concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Alexandra, so maybe you can start answering some of the questions. So there was one question on how the Ministry of Agriculture is engaged in the process. Then there was a question on what role agroecology can play. And then the question from Raulito, no? Basically
Yes.
on how to anchor such a food system more permanently in government structures, so that when new governments take place, then yeah, the policies and programs aren't changed. So Alexandra, please, can you try to answer that?
Yes, thank you, Marielle. I really want your help for translation. For the first question, the role of Agriculture Ministry. A ver, Marielle, yo creo que el Ministerio de Agricultura, a través de sus agencias que tienen que ver con comercialización social, redes comerciales en la que incluyen a los pequeños agricultores, está muy involucrada. A través de su agencia Agrocalidad, que es la Autoridad Nacional de Control sobre la Inocuidad, sobre la producción orgánica y agroecológica, también está muy involucrada en el proceso, y el área de innovación. De hecho, el Ministerio de Agricultura juega un rol importante en la construcción de la política, ya que nos estamos rigiendo a sus lineamientos, y actualmente nuestra Constitución habla mucho de soberanía alimentaria. La seguridad se apoya mucho en la soberanía alimentaria, entonces tenemos una base legal que nos permite desarrollar esta política.
Okay, Alexandra says that the Ministry of Agriculture plays a role through different departments. So one is the Department of Marketing, and they also have specific programs for support to local producers, where they support organic or agroecological production and innovation. And the advantage of Ecuador is that in their national constitution, they have included the issue of food sovereignty. So there is an important role for the Ministry of Agriculture to be engaged. And just to add one detail in that process that Alexandra talked about, and you can still see the pictures on the screen, this participatory process. Representatives from different levels of governments are invited to discuss the food strategy and to give shape to it. And Alexandra, can you also share your thoughts now? Quito will also have elections coming up. So the food policy that you are designing, how do you make sure that it will still be in place in case there will be a new government?
Marielle, sí. Bueno, la última parte, ¿podrías traducirla, por favor?
Habrán elecciones pronto en Quito y Ecuador. ¿Cómo vas a asegurar que la permanencia de la estrategia territorial para que cuando haya un nuevo gobierno nos ponga al lado todo lo que están haciendo?
Bueno, precisamente el proceso es multiactoral y multinivel. Generamos gobernanza participativa y la política tendrá una validación social sumamente amplia. Entonces, la política para Quito deberá ser aprobada mediante ordenanza municipal. Y cuando lleguemos a este nivel, que esperamos que sea el próximo año, el tema estará blindado. Y lo que está como una política pública establecido mediante ordenanza debe cumplirse y se le debe asignar presupuesto y recursos. Entonces, por eso es que este proceso tiene ese carácter, ¿no? Multiactoral y multinivel.
So Alexandra says that the process through which they are designing the food policy is a multi-stakeholder and multi-level, multi-actor process. And the food strategy will be anchored in a municipal ordinance. And once it's a municipal ordinance, then any new government that comes has to comply to that and has to assign budget to its implementation. So anchoring it in a policy is one way, you know, of ensuring sustainability beyond political changes. Strategies that other cities have used are food policy councils. So make sure that the food strategy and food policy is carried by a food policy council in which different municipal departments and other governments are engaged, but also civil society organizations that can put pressure on a new government to continue implementing such policies and strategies. Also to ensure participation and uptake by technical staff, so people that will not likely to change when there's elections and when there's new leaders. Maybe also to add a bit more on the question on agroecology. When I think that plays a very important role in most of the cities that embark on this system, that have a vision for a food system which promotes more ecological forms of production. Not only in terms of you know, production technologies, but also a vision of agroecology, which builds on providing access to land to producers, which builds on concepts like the right to the city and the right to markets, concepts of food sovereignty and ownership. And I think you can see that when you look back at how I presented the vision for a sustainable city region food system, that those concepts are very easy to introduce. I'd like to go now to a second round of interventions and questions. So maybe you can raise your hand again.
Marielle, si es posible, yo quisiera ampliar también la respuesta frente a las otras preguntas. Para Quito, la agroecología juega un rol fundamental en la construcción de nuestra política. De hecho, los grupos relacionados al consumo y a la producción sostenible se basan en agroecología. Y hoy tenemos un pilar fundamental, que es hay una nueva ley que se aprobó, que es la de fortalecer las formas sostenibles de producción, entre ellas agroecología y producción orgánica. Entonces, sí creemos que la ciudad tendrá una meta a futuro de reconversión de su agricultura hacia agroecología. Es una meta ambiciosa, pero es indispensable. No podemos hablar de sostenibilidad si no consideramos el tema de agroecología en la producción. Y de hecho, también adicional a la aprobación de una ordenanza que valide políticamente nuestra propuesta de política alimentaria, formaremos un concilio de la política, ¿no? Con varios de los actores del grupo núcleo que hoy está trabajando. Existe un compromiso de continuar con esto y de apoyar la operativización de todas las acciones que contemplará la ordenanza.
Thanks, Alexandra. So Alexandra added that in terms of agroecology for Quito, that is a very important focus, both for their work in support of producers, but also from the perspective of consumers. So there's a large consumer demand for more ecological products. There is also a national law in support of sustainable production, and amongst others, agroecology. So in its food strategy, Quito will put up a target for reconversion of production systems towards agroecological production systems. And in terms of political changes in Quito, they will also set up a food policy council in which different organizations will participate and are already committed to participate, and that will also help to carry on the process beyond any new political government. So thanks, Alexandra. And yeah, I'd like to see again a couple of hands. So Carmen, you still have a hand. So if you want to add anything.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, yes. I just wanted to ask Quito concerning this last point about agroecological policy. So how did you manage to work concretely, I mean, with all the producers? What was the procedure you managed to implement in order to work with all the network of producers? Because in fact, in Antananarivo, the problem is that we have lots of producers which are not obligatory associated between them. We have no cooperatives, so I just want to learn from them what's the structure that you need in order to make them work all together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. I first would like to pass this question to Belo Horizonte. Because I know they've also been working about that and put up the issue of agroecology. So Belo Horizonte, can you say how you are working with producers and also share a bit more of your experience? That is to Beatrice and her colleague João.
Hi there, Beatrice is here also. We are in 3 from Belo Horizonte. We have a little question for Quito also. I don't know if I do the question, I make the question and also speak a little bit, or if we make the question and after that, after the answer, we share a little bit how we work here. What do you think?
No, please, you can say the question and share your work. Because we'd like to hear from you, and then after that we'll go back to Alexandra.
Okay. So the question for Alexandra is how this multi-level of participatory system works. Just in a general way, we would like to understand this a little bit. And if the producers, do they take part in these different levels, and how does it work? So this is the question. And we are very happy to hear this experience and this point of view from Quito, because it's very alike our experience we are building here in Belo Horizonte. So in short words, the food security department here in Belo Horizonte, we have 25 years of existence through different governments. This government now, we have 1 year, we are finishing We just started this 4-year government in the beginning of the year, and we have from the old or the experience from the past governments, we have 3 focus. One on food assistance, focus especially on schools, food systems, and popular restaurants with low-cost food. We have another focus on promotion of urban agriculture with technical assistance and enforcement of vegetable gardens, planting on backyards and stuff in the city, in different regions of the city. And also we have a focus on marketing with different fairs and food market, and bringing stuff right from the producers to sell in different places in the cities, in this way of short distance and local circuits of commercialization. So these 3 focus was how the policy was running until now. So from now on, we have now 2 focus on transformation or enforcing these policies. And all of them are focused on agroecology and also participatory process, which is, first of all, we have 2 programs, one named Sustainable Territories, and the other one named Agroecological Corridors, which are based on agroecology production, which we will work with technical assistance, not the regular one, but the one based on the technology, the campesino methodology, and which is a participatory methodology, which the world, I would say, the world knew this from Cuba. In fact, it's not from Cuba, but they had a great result on Cuba with this methodology, which is a collective and participatory way of making the agroecological knowledge building. Another point on these 2 programs is enforce and promotion production. We are focused especially on poor territories in the city and peripheries and poor neighborhoods. So you go there, we have a course of this technology, this methodology, campesino, and we have our team that is working now. We have the first territory running with seeing where do we can grow food, and then starting agroecological process in these places and lands, and also family growing food, and also collective growing food process. We have also focused on this production to be marketed on local trade process, so short circuits, local trading, and as I told, everything focused on agroecology and participatory process. So the second and final process we are working on in this new policies we are building is very linked to the city region scale, which is building we have here in Brazil a law of organic and agricultural marketing, where we can do certification for organic and agroecological products, not by a company, but by a participatory way. So we are working on building a network in the metropolitan area, getting together with producers to do a very strong network of agroecological growers. So with certification, but a participatory certification. So we are now working on these three new points: the sustainable territories, the corridor, agroecological corridor, and also this network metropolitan of agroecological growers with participatory certification. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting and comprehensive program from Belo, and indeed, yeah, quite similar to Quito, but I also think to Sao Paulo. There is, I would like to go back now to Alexandra with your question, and there's many questions that were posed in the with the question mark sign for those people who didn't have opportunity to get their mics working. So Alexandra, are you there? Then I'll give the questions first in English, and then if you need translation, I'll do them in Spanish. So
okay,
okay.
Sí,
So there is two questions on the structure of your work. So one, can you explain a bit more in detail on how the multi-level participation works? So between different levels of government. And if you can explain how producers take part in the process.
Sí, Marielle. El enfoque multinivel y multisector que tiene la construcción de nuestra política se refiere a que están involucrados instancias del gobierno nacional, provincial y de la municipalidad, del gobierno local. Por otra parte, al ser multisectorial, está involucrando a los diversos eslabones, a representantes de los diversos eslabones del sistema alimentario de Quito, es decir, de los productores, los procesadores, los distribuidores, los consumidores y con el tema del postconsumo, inclusive quien maneja los desechos alimentarios. Son parte fundamental de esta construcción, por lo tanto, los pequeños, los medianos y los grandes productores. Con énfasis en los pequeños grupos, sobre todo de producción agroecológica. No podemos descartar tampoco que existen cámaras de agricultura y cámaras de la producción que abarcan a medianos y grandes productores que por el momento no tienen prácticas del todo sostenibles. Pero de eso se trata, el tener un proceso de construcción multiactorial, multisector, multinivel, el de brindar esa oportunidad de escuchar y de recibir los aportes de todos los actores para construir en conjunto una propuesta. Este es un primer punto de partida. Entendemos que cada actor tiene en el inicio sus propios intereses por los que está presente y los va a defender, pero tenemos que llegar a un punto medio en el que abordemos el tema de sostenibilidad y resiliencia del sistema alimentario. Por otra parte, decir que están involucradas las áreas de ambiente, de salud, de desarrollo productivo, de educación, de riesgos, de resiliencia, entre otras, ¿no? Entonces, hemos tratado de tener un panorama sumamente amplio e integrador de todos los interesados en el sistema alimentario de Quito. Eso por una parte.
Okay. So Alexandra explains that in this group of stakeholders that is jointly formulating the food strategy. So they're still in the process of formulating the strategy, no? So they're not implementing it yet. There's participation of representatives of the local government, the provincial government, and the national government. Also representatives from different government departments, so health, education, resilience, social production, environment, and representation of different actors, so producers, processors, organizations dealing with food waste. In terms of producers, there is a majority presentation of smaller groups. They have a specific focus to ensure participation of small producers and those working towards agroecology. But they also recognize the role of medium or large-scale producers who are not yet producing in a sustainable way. And that is exactly the reason why all the actors participate in the process, to share experiences, to share demands, to share needs, and to jointly construct a food strategy. Alexandra, there were also questions on, was it difficult for you to generate political support from these different levels? And how did you do that?
Sí, definitivamente es un proceso complicado. El tratar de involucrar los distintos niveles de gobierno del país, de la provincia y de la ciudad, el hacer que se interesen por el tema de alimentación ha sido muy complicado. En la ciudad de Quito se planifica todo. El transporte, se planifica el urbanismo, se planifica la reducción de emisiones, pero nunca se había abordado el tema de alimentación con la fuerza que lo estamos haciendo hoy. Y el colocar el tema sobre la mesa ha sido muy difícil. En realidad, el poder convocar a los actores, a las personas correctas para que se sienten en una mesa a discutir el tema, ha sido un proceso complicado, pero creo que se está abriendo el camino. Y eso es lo más importante. Tenemos un punto de partida que es el grupo núcleo, dentro del cual se encuentran varias autoridades o sus delegados y representantes de todos los eslabones del sistema alimentario. Entonces, el tema se discute a profundidad y creo que este es un buen punto de partida.
Alexandra says that indeed it's a difficult process to get these different government departments and different levels of government together. There are similar, structures for other issues, but food was so far never an issue of joint interest. So it has taken them a lot of time to get the right people together, to get those people at the same table. But what I can see as an outsider on why that worked, I think it was one because of personal contacts of Alexandra and the people within her team who reached out to other people. So have bilateral conversations on telling them why food is important, what the other departments or governments are already doing on food, so what their own interests are in the topic. I think it was because Quito developed some very good communication strategies. And one of them is included in the handouts, which is a short policy brief, which basically contains the facts that Alexandra shared in her PowerPoint presentation. So make the issue visible, on how important food is, what are problems with obesity and nutrition, what are problems in terms of vulnerability. I think that was another important activity. Also for Quito, I think it helped a lot that Quito was hosting the Habitat 3 conference, where there was a lot of international attention for food. So I think that's another strategy to use, to engage the city in international debates. And Alexandra also mentioned the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. So the fact that 148 other cities are doing this is also a policy lobbying argument. I have two final questions for you, Alexandra. Can can you tell a bit about what are the next steps that you want to take, and how are you planning to follow up on targets and achievements?
Bueno, los próximos pasos que tenemos son concluir los talleres de análisis de los pilares estratégicos, porque estamos en pleno proceso de desarrollo. Tenemos un taller, un gran taller que convocará la propia alcaldía para la ciudadanía y más actores para una validación social de la propuesta y empezar un proceso político de discusión entre el Consejo Metropolitano para la aprobación de una ordenanza. Esos son los siguientes pasos que están planificados hasta el 2018. Y bueno, la segunda pregunta, ¿me la podrías traducir?
La segunda pregunta es cómo piensan hacer el seguimiento, ¿no? Una vez que está aprobado y se implementa. ¿Cómo vas a seguir, cómo vas a monitorear si cumples con las metas?
Sí, de hecho, la propuesta presenta también un marco de indicadores. Cada pilar estratégico tiene un juego de indicadores y que están muy relacionados y están anclados, han tomado como base el marco de indicadores propuesto por el Pacto de Milán. Entonces, le queremos dar coherencia a esto y esa será la forma de medir el impacto.
Thank you, Alexandra. So the next steps in Quito for next year are to continue with that group of stakeholders to further draft the food strategy for each of the pillars. So what specifically do we want to achieve in each of the pillars? How can we build on what people are already doing? What type of new actions have to be developed? Once that strategy document is completed and validated by the stakeholders, it will go to the council for approval, and they will draft a municipal ordinance, as Alexandra explained before, which will include this food strategy, you know, in municipal policies and budgets. In terms of how they are going to monitor implementation, for each of the pillars and strategies in the food strategy, they are defining targets and indicators. And as much as possible, these indicators will be the same indicators as the ones that are now being developed for the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, plus some additional indicators which are specific for Quito. And they will establish a baseline for those indicators and use them to monitor achievements. I think it's about 3:30 now. So I would like really to thank Alexandra for the presentation and the many answers. I'm sure there's many more, but we'll have the opportunity to further exchange. And specifically for Latin America, CITYFOOD is looking towards an exchange between Latin American cities. I would like to give a last opportunity for some final questions that you can pose. And I would like to get your opinions on the next webinar. So do you have any topics that you would like to discuss in the next webinar, which can take place end of January or February next year? And is there any city specifically interested in sharing experiences? So please raise your hand or put your comment in the questions section.
Saberia sugerir Você sabe o tema?
Agroecologia e processos
Tema
participativos.
para o próximo.
Governança participativa.
Governança participativa.
Acho que era interessante. Ok. Não? Eu não tenho.
Já não tá rápido.
O mercado da governança, ela é ainda no nível da articulação, né, de representantes, que é um pouco que a gente já tem.
While you're thinking about that, I just want to say, you know, again, that in the handout sections, there's background materials. I also want to say that the whole webinar is being recorded. So you will get the link and you can listen to the webinar again and also review the presentations again. Okay, so far there are no concrete inputs on the next webinar, which is no problem. We can always share that by email, no? And you can think about that and contact us with a proposal. I have one possible topic, which is looking at sustainability of institutional food procurement. Because I know there's a couple of cities with very interesting experiences. So the city of Ada has a very interesting experiences with what they call a food hospital. So how can we ensure better food for patients? I know that Antananarivo has worked on school feeding. I know that Malmö has looked at organic meals in schools. So maybe that could be a topic to share experiences on, how we can get more local and more healthy food in institutional programs. But as I said, we'll gather some more ideas from you, and then we'll inform you also. Okay, Belo Horizonte proposes a topic, agroecology and participatory governance. Thanks, that could indeed also be taken into account. And that reminds me that RUAF has just published today a magazine on agroecology. So I will share the link with you. And we have also a suggestion from Anna Mori that the next webinar could be talking about large cities, so metropolitan cities, how to work with indicators, and how to work with short supply chain in large areas. I think that's a very interesting suggestion, as we also had a suggestion to do a similar webinar for specifically small and medium-sized cities. So we could also look at the specific issues of different geographies. So I would like to thank you all for your participation, and as I said, the webinar will be recorded. You will be informed and get the link, and we look forward to be in touch with all of you again. And again, thank you very much, Alexandra. Muchas gracias, Alexandra, for your presentation and the time for responding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marielle. Yeah, thank you very much for everyone who participated in the webinar. I would like also to thank the Capacity Center team and apologize for any technical difficulties that we had. Thank you, Marielle, for giving the presentation and also for moderating the discussion and providing a very nice framework for the debate. And yes, thank you, Alexandra, for sharing the Quito experience. It's very inspiring for all of us, for sure.
Thank you very much to you. It was a pleasure for Quito.
So I think we can wrap up. As Marielle said, we recorded the webinar. It will be made available. And also we can share the handouts that were available during the webinar. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.